Today on a cutting board, full disassembly and reassembly of Benchmade 9570 Mini Claymore. My apologies for the speeded up video, otherwise it would take way too long. I begin by removing the pocket clip, which in my case is located on the right side because I'm right-handed. This is going to be a complicated disassembly and reassembly. Do not attempt unless you're mechanically inclined. I continue by removing T6 screws located on the left scale of the knife. Please use quality bits because the screws can be easily stripped. There are 4 screws that you will need to remove. Please take notice that 3 of those screws are of the same length, but the one that's toward the front of the knife is slightly longer. I'm switching my bit to T10 and loosen the pivot screw. This screw has very fine threads. The pivot screw is removed and then the scale is lifted. Then the safety is removed by simply lifting it up. The right way to do it would be to lift the liner from under the tab on the torsion spring, but that worked too. The push button is next. The blade simply lifts up from the pivot stem, revealing the other bronze phosphate washer. Now you can remove the remaining screws and complete the disassembly. I degreased and cleaned all the components while they were apart. Begin the reassembly by inserting these 2 posts into the left scale. Secure them temporarily with a piece of tape. Next, place the safety lever into its nest. Then place the torsion spring in this orientation into its nest. A sliding motion is required to place the left liner, but in the end it should look like this. Note the protruding tab. Next, insert the spool-shaped spacer into the liner and secure it with a screw from the opposite side. Then place the bronze phosphate washer over the torsion spring. Insert the small spacer into the liner. We are ready to drop in the blade. It should all look like this. Place the cutout on the blade over the tab on the torsion spring. The cutout on the blade should engage the tab on the torsion spring. Please pardon my dirty knife enthusiast fingers. This spacer has a threaded side and unthreaded side. The threaded side should be pointing upward. The spacer will fit in any orientation, so you have to pay close attention, otherwise you won't be able to reassemble the knife. While you were inserting this spacer, the blade was held forward, compressing the spring slightly. Once you release the blade, it will rest against the spacer. The middle section of the spacer is hexagonal. Make sure that one of the flat surfaces on the spacer is engaging the flat surface on the back of the blade. At this point, the pressure generated by the compressed spring against the spacer is holding the blade in place. Next, insert the push button, making sure that the capped side is orientated upward. The flat on the push button should be pointing toward the center of the pivot hole. Place the bronze washer over the top of the blade, and then drop in the right-hand side liner. It should engage the 2 spacers and the push button simultaneously. Above the sharp edges of all holes, that's why the metal is discolored. Place the helical spring on top of the push button. And don't forget to place the back spacer like I almost did. For the next step, you're going to need a steady hand. Carefully line up the scale and compressing the spring, drop it in. Hold everything in place while threading in one of the back spacer screws, and then the middle spacer screw. For now, the screw should be just hand tight, not torqued. Next, secure the middle screw that holds the liner to the scale. While keeping all the components under compression, flip the knife over and secure the other liner with the middle screw. Rotate the knife again. Secure the forward spacer with the longest screw. I used blue Loctite on all the screws. This is a sophisticated method to align bronze washer with the hole. Once the proper alignment is achieved, everything should look like this. The locating feature on one of the liners should be fully visible, otherwise you will not be able to insert the pivot. I did kind of make it look easy, but in reality it took a couple attempts. Apply Loctite to the pivot screw threads, then flip the knife over and thread it in from the other side. At this point the pivot screw does not have to be very tight. I back up about a quarter turn from the hand tight position. It is a good point in time to check the operation of the knife. The button should operate smoothly. The safety should lock in the blade out position as well as in the blade in position. You know that the safety is fully engaged when there is no gap between it and the scale in the front. At this point, a small amount of play in the blade is still acceptable. When satisfied that the knife operates properly, complete the assembly by threading in all remaining screws. When tightening these particular screws in the middle of the scales, do not over tighten. Doing so will misalign the liners and prevent proper operation of the push button. If the push button or the safety don't feel right, no amount of oil will fix it. You will need to readjust these screws. If you followed my advice and applied Loctite to all the threads, now is a good time to check the blade for alignment before the Loctite sets. Lastly, it's time to install the pocket clip. Function check the knife again. 3 final checks. The safety fully engages whether the blade is in open or closed position. The button doesn't get stuck in up or down position. And the blade has no play or almost no play. If any of these 3 conditions is not met, that means something is misaligned and the knife is not safe. No knife video is complete without the paper cutting test. If you found this video helpful, please hit like and subscribe.